there are a lot of things to be said about the world of popular music as well. Of course, the drum set was the percussion instrument in the jazz and then eventually the rock orchestra, so to speak. In other words, it also relied to some extent on the activities of other musicians to give it sense. So it belonged, it was a part of the group, but it was also, just like the orchestra, apart from the group. In other words, the drum set, being the instruments in a jazz band most directly related to the instruments of Africa, to the instruments of the African American diaspora, stood for something exotic and outside. So in a jazz ensemble where one recognizes that there's a stand-up string bass, and you've seen it in an orchestra before, and there's a piano, and there's a cornet, these are all instruments which we know from the Western canon, the drum set has stood for this thing that came in from elsewhere, the representative of otherness, if you will. And it brings me to another point about percussion, which is that the ancestry of percussion is anonymous. We can name the great 18th and 17th century practitioners of the violin. We can talk about the great virtuosos of piano from the 19th century. We can talk about them by name, but we cannot do the same thing for percussion. Now, certainly there were virtuosos of the 12th and the 15th century on drums from different parts of the world, but they are anonymous to us. We have inherited their tradition, but we have not inherited their stories. And furthermore, largely the world of percussion as we know it today in the Western canon are the instruments of slaves. In other words, these are the instruments of the powerless and of the anonymous. And so when we touch a percussion instrument, when I touch a conga drum, the skin on a drum, or the metal face of a gong, I am also touching the lives of all of those people who have ever played those instruments, and I don't know their names. When you touch a piano keyboard, you're touching the instrument that Thelonious Monk and that Frédéric Chopin played. When I touch a djembe, I'm touching the instrument that generations and centuries of African musicians have played, though I don't know them.